Hello students, my name is Iqbal Singh and I am the faculty for International Relations and PSIR optional paper at Vajiram Ravi. In this video, I am going to have a short discussion with you on India's nuclear doctrine. I hope you all are aware that India is a proud nuclear weapon state. India had acquired nuclear weapons in the year 1998. Therefore, it is very important for us to understand what is India's nuclear doctrine, which also is very important from the exam perspective. However, before I start doing the discussion, I would also want to make a clarification here. Lot of students have this misunderstanding that India had done a nuclear test in 1974. Therefore, India had nuclear weapons since 1974, which is incorrect. That is not right. You must know one thing, students, that nuclear technology is a dual-use technology. It is a dual-use technology. It can be used for a peaceful purpose or a civilian purpose, which is generating nuclear energy, for example, electricity, or the same technology can also be used for military purpose, that is weaponization. So the two nuclear tests which we had done in 1974 and 1998, they were for different purposes. The 1974 nuclear tests were peaceful nuclear explosions. When I say peaceful nuclear explosions, that means that India had tested nuclear technology in 1974, which can be used only for peaceful purposes. However, in the 1998 nuclear test, India had tested nuclear weapons. So therefore, yes, we did test twice. The 1974 test was also done in Pokhran and 1998 test was also done in Pokhran. But it is not correct to say that India had adopted or India had acquired nuclear weapons in 1974. 1974 were peaceful nuclear explosions. At that time, we had tested technology only for peaceful purpose, and we acquired nuclear weapons and tested nuclear weapons in 1998. And 98, India became a nuclear weapon country. You must also know that there are only 9 countries in the world which are nuclear weapon states, which have nuclear weapons. Which are these 9 countries? Permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council: US, UK, France, Russia and China, plus 4 more countries, which are India, Pakistan, North Korea and Israel. So there are only 9 countries in the world with nuclear weapons. Therefore, this makes India one of the prominent nuclear weapon states in the world. That is the reason why it is so important to understand India's nuclear doctrine. Now, why and what is the need to adopt a nuclear doctrine? What is important about nuclear doctrine? In the nuclear doctrine, India basically is trying to communicate to the world that we have the weapons and in what manner we will use these weapons and when we will use these weapons and in what manner. That is what we are able to communicate to the world through our nuclear doctrine. Why such a communication is important? Why such a communication is required? Because you must understand that why nuclear weapons are developed. Nuclear weapons are developed to achieve nuclear deterrence. India's purpose also has been to achieve nuclear deterrence. India has acquired nuclear weapons to achieve nuclear deterrence. Now you must be wondering, what is nuclear deterrence? Nuclear deterrence is a concept which says that if you have nuclear weapons, then with your nuclear weapons, with the destructive potential which you have, with that destructive potential, you can deter other countries. Deter means frighten other countries to not have a war with you. If you will have the nuclear weapons, you know, have a lot of destructive potential. Now this destructive potential, it frightens other countries that they should not have a war with you. They get deterred, and therefore nuclear weapons helps in ensuring your national security. This is why nuclear weapons are developed, to achieve nuclear deterrence. Nuclear deterrence is a guarantee to the national security of a country. So India's development of nuclear weapons have also been done to develop nuclear deterrence as a guarantee to India's national security, which actually is required. Why? Because we are surrounded with 2 countries which have nuclear weapons. China had nuclear weapons even earlier than India, and then Pakistan has also subsequently acquired. So 2 of our hostile neighbors have nuclear weapons. So obviously, we should also have the same weapons to ensure our national security. So that is why nuclear weapons have been developed, to ensure nuclear deterrence. Now, when we talk about the concept of nuclear deterrence is dependent on 3 C's. It is made up of 3 C's. Which are these 3 C's? Communication, capability and credibility. Communication, capability and credibility. First of all, you must display to the world that you have that capability, that I have the capability, I have acquired nuclear weapons. That capability must be displayed in front of the world, which we have done in 98 already by testing our nuclear weapons. Then If you are able to display your capability, then only your nuclear deterrence would be considered credible. Credibility here means that you need that other countries, they respect your nuclear deterrence. They should be convinced with your nuclear capability and therefore deterred and frightened and not dare to attack you or harm your national security. So if you want other countries to respect your nuclear weapons capability, then you must ensure that you are able to display that capability convincingly. If you have displayed your capability convincingly, naturally your nuclear deterrence would be credible. And in order to ensure that your nuclear deterrence is credible, one more C is required, which is communication. That means you should very clearly communicate to the world that these are my nuclear red lines. Basically, Lakshman Rekhas, that in such and such circumstances, I will be compelled to use nuclear weapons. That means that very clearly you have to tell the world and you have to communicate to the world that if such and such situation, in such and such situation, in such and such circumstances, if these parameters are violated, then I will be compelled to use my nuclear weapons to defend myself. So this should be communicated very clearly to the world. Nuclear red lines. That if these parameters, these XYZ parameters are violated, then I will be compelled to use my nuclear weapons and I will not shy away from using my nuclear weapons to protect my national security. These are called nuclear red lines. So nuclear red lines also should be very clearly communicated to your adversaries in order to enjoy credible nuclear deterrence. So nuclear deterrence has 3 C's: capability, credibility, and communication. Now all these 3 C's are ensured by adopting the nuclear doctrine. In India's nuclear doctrine, India has defined its nuclear red lines. In India's nuclear doctrine, India has spelled out main features of the doctrine, that which are those circumstances in which India will use its nuclear weapons and in what manner. This has been communicated in India's nuclear doctrine. Our nuclear doctrine was adopted after the 98 nuclear tests. In fact, when in 1998 India tested nuclear weapons, that is when National Security Advisory Board was constituted, which submitted a draft report on India's nuclear doctrine in 1999. And this draft report was formally adopted as India's nuclear doctrine by the government in January 2003. Now, what are the main features of our nuclear doctrine, most prominent features of our nuclear doctrine, which I have listed here for you and we must discuss. First of all, the aim of our nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons arsenal is to build and maintain a credible minimum deterrent. I have already told you that credibility is a very important parameter in nuclear deterrence concept. Our nuclear deterrence should be credible. It should be respected by the world. The nuclear weapons capability of India should be respected by the world. The world should be deterred and frightened and should not dare to attack India and harm India's national security. That credibility we want. Also, our nuclear doctrine says that India has adopted a minimalistic position, not a maximalistic position. When I say minimalistic position, what do I mean by this? Through our nuclear doctrine, India is able to send this message to the world that nuclear weapons of India have been acquired not for an offensive purpose, but for a defensive purpose. That means India's nuclear weapons are not there to harm other countries or to threaten other countries. We have acquired nuclear weapons. Why? To safeguard our national security. So India's nuclear weapons will be used to defend India's national security, not to harm other countries. So this minimalistic position also India has adopted by launching the nuclear doctrine. How we have been able to do that? By following the posture of no first use. India's nuclear doctrine, this is the most important feature of India's nuclear doctrine, that India follows the posture of no first use. That means that India has clarified in its nuclear doctrine that India will never use its nuclear weapons first. That means India will never do a first strike. That means India will use nuclear weapons only if India is attacked. If India is attacked and if India's national security is jeopardized, then only India will use its nuclear weapons and do a retaliatory strike. So India is never going to do a first nuclear strike, no first use. Now, it is not as easy as it sounds. No, it's not as easy as it sounds, because maintaining a no first use posture necessitates that India must have a second strike capability. If a country like India wants to maintain a no first use posture, that means that India will have to compulsorily develop a second strike capability. Why second strike capability? Because we've already clarified that we are never going to use our nuclear weapons first. So if an adversary of India, an enemy of India, does a nuclear attack on India first, and if in the first attack itself, if it is able to destroy all India's nuclear weapons, then we will not be left with any capability to retaliate. And in that case, our nuclear deterrence would not be credible and would not be respected by the world, and therefore our national security would be jeopardized. Therefore, it is very important that in order to have credible nuclear deterrence and in order to maintain the no first use posture, India must have second strike capability. That means we should be able to convince the world that we have the second strike capability, that even if you attack us first, still we will be left with enough nuclear weapons that we will be able to do a retaliatory strike. Then only the world would be deterred and frightened and will not harm India's national security. Then only our nuclear deterrence would work. So this second strike capability should be acquired to exercise this posture of NFU. And that is exactly what India has done. India has acquired second strike capability. How can you acquire second strike capability? Second strike capability is acquired by the formation of nuclear triad. If as a country, if you are able to form nuclear triad, then that means that you have second strike capability. Nuclear triad means the capability to launch your nuclear missiles from land, from air, and from underwater, nuclear ballistic submarines. Again, I will repeat, the capability to launch nuclear attack from land, from air, and from underwater, which is nuclear ballistic submarines. So India has achieved all these three capabilities. So India has achieved nuclear triad. Therefore, India has a very convincing second strike capability. Therefore, India is able to maintain this posture of a NFU. Then also India's nuclear doctrine says that if there is a first strike on India, then India is going to do a massive retaliation which will inflict unacceptable damage on our adversaries. That means if at all India is attacked first, we are going to do a second strike. We have the second strike capability and it will be a massive retaliation. So beware, countries of the world, they should not even dare to think or attack India, because India has nuclear weapons capability, very destructive capability, and India will use those nuclear weapons to defend itself. And you must understand this, that this whole idea of nuclear deterrence works on the basis of MAD doctrine. MAD doctrine means mutually assured destruction. Now, what happens in a nuclear war, where if two countries have nuclear weapons, if they fight a war with each other, what will happen? They will use their nuclear weapons against each other and they will end up destroying each other. This is known as mutually assured destruction, MAD doctrine. Therefore, in case of such a war, there will be nobody would be winning the war. All participants will lose the war. Therefore, it doesn't make any sense to have a war between nuclear weapon states. This is what the concept of nuclear deterrence is all about. And that is what India is trying to achieve, that we have the nuclear weapons and therefore no country should, or even a nuclear weapon state like China or Pakistan should not dare to fight a war with India, because we are going to use our nuclear weapons, and in that case, it will lead to mutually assured destruction. And we also have the second strike capability, which is a necessary requirement for MAD doctrine. So this is something which you must understand. So India has said that if India is attacked, then there will be massive retaliation designed to inflict unacceptable damage. Then also India has clarified in its nuclear doctrine that the authority, the power to permit a nuclear attack in India is with the civilian political leadership. Civilian political leadership of India has the authority to give the permission to launch a nuclear strike. And they will do this through the Nuclear Command Authority. Nuclear Command Authority has been constituted in India. Nuclear Command Authority has two branches, Political Council and Executive Council. Political Council is headed by the Prime Minister. Executive Council is headed by the National Security Advisor, who right now happens to be Mr. Ajit Doval. Executive Council is going to advise the Political Council. And Political Council has the sole power to authorize the use of nuclear weapons in India. and executive council will give advice to the political council, and executive council will also implement the decision taken by the political council. So political council of the nuclear command authority has the sole power to authorize the use of nuclear weapons in India. So this nuclear command authority has been created, and through this, the civilian political leadership of India has the power to authorize the use of nuclear weapons. This also has been given in the doctrine. That means if any of the armed forces, they want to use nuclear weapons, they will not be able to use it without the permission from the civilian political leadership through the nuclear command authority. India in its nuclear doctrine also has clarified that India, as a responsible nuclear state, as a peace-loving country, is never going to use its nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear weapon states. Only 9 countries in the world has nuclear weapons and the rest of the world doesn't have. So India will not use its nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear weapon state. That also India has clarified. India has also said that if there's a major attack against India on Indian forces anywhere in the world, then India has the option of using nuclear weapons to defend its forces. India has clarified here that if WMDs are used against Indian forces anywhere in the world, then India will do a retaliatory nuclear strike. WMDs are weapons of mass destruction. There are 3 kinds of weapons of mass destruction: nuclear weapons, biological weapons, and chemical weapons. So if any of these 3, nuclear weapons or biological weapons or chemical weapons, if they are used against Indian forces anywhere in the world, India will retain the option of retaliating with nuclear weapons. Again, as a responsible nuclear state of the world, India stays committed to having necessary controls over nuclear and missile related materials and technologies. That means India would support all such policies where India will try and check the export of these technologies, so such nuclear related technologies should not proliferate in the world in order to achieve the goal of nuclear non-proliferation. Therefore, India continues to support FMCT negotiations. FMCT is Fissile Material Cutoff Treaty. Fissile material is enriched uranium which is used for nuclear weapons, which is used in nuclear weapons. So there's a treaty right now being negotiated in the world that production and trade of fissile material should be prohibited, and India supports that for the sake of nuclear non-proliferation. However, the treaty has still not been signed. It still is being negotiated at the world level. And India also says that we will continue to observe the moratorium on nuclear test. India has put a self-moratorium on itself, a self-ban on itself, that India will never do a nuclear test again. That India is never going to do a nuclear test again. India will continue to follow that, which again reflects India's status as a responsible nuclear state. Also, India has clarified in the doctrine that India will continue to support the goal of nuclear disarmament. Nuclear disarmament is that whatever nuclear weapons are there in the world, all nuclear weapons should be disarmed and we should have a planet free of nuclear weapons. A world free of nuclear weapons. India supports this goal. India is fully supportive of the goal of nuclear disarmament. India is a peace-loving country. India is a land of Gandhi. We are a peace-loving country. We would be the happiest if there's a world free of nuclear weapons. India supports the goal of nuclear disarmament. In fact, in 1988, India had proposed a nuclear disarmament plan to the United Nations called Rajiv Gandhi Action Plan on Nuclear Disarmament. However, India has clarified to the world that India would only support global, verifiable, and non-discriminatory nuclear disarmament. If only such kind of nuclear disarmament is pursued, verifiable, non-discriminatory and global, then only India would follow that. India says that if you do non-discriminatory nuclear disarmament, that means in a non-discriminatory manner, if all countries they decide to give up their nuclear weapons, then India would also give up, but not in a discriminatory manner. For example, there is already a treaty called NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which India has not signed. Why? Because according to India, it is discriminatory in nature, because it is creating nuclear haves and nuclear have-nots. As per NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, 5 countries of the world have been allowed to have nuclear weapons and the rest of the world has been told to give up their nuclear weapons program. Which are these 5 permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council? India has been against this treaty. Why? India says this treaty is discriminatory. Why are you allowing these 5? You should tell these 5 also to give up. So according to India, NPT is discriminatory. That is why India has not signed NPT. But India says we support the goal of nuclear disarmament, but not in the manner in which NPT is trying to achieve it. India will support global disarmament. India will support nuclear disarmament if it is global, verifiable, and non-discriminatory. So these are the prominent features and the most important features of India's nuclear doctrine. In fact, there are other issues also which needs discussion in this particular topic. For example, in our country, there's a debate right now going on that India's NFU posture must change, because we have adopted a NFU posture. So according to a lot of scholars and experts, this gives unnecessary advantage to Pakistan. We are giving military advantage to Pakistan, a hostile neighbor like Pakistan, because of our NFU posture. Pakistan continues to sponsor terrorism against India. Why? Because there is no fear for Pakistan that India will retaliate with a nuclear strike because of our NFU posture, which allows Pakistan to do sub-conventional conflicts with India, to fight a proxy war with India, to sponsor terrorism against India. Therefore, there are arguments that our NFU posture must change. But there are also experts, equal amount of experts, which say that no, it should not change. This is the right posture and we should continue to follow this posture, because this posture, because of this posture, India is considered as a responsible nuclear state in the world, has been even given a waiver by NSG Nuclear Suppliers Group, which would not have been possible if we didn't have such a posture, NFU posture. So there are arguments in favor of NFU change and arguments against NFU change, which also must be discussed and should be discussed. However, I do hope to see you in our classes in the institute. When you see me in the classes in the institute, we will continue the discussion and we will discuss that whether this policy, this doctrine, NFU doctrine should change or it should not change. What are the advantages if we change it and what would be the consequences if we change it. Arguments in favor and against, all arguments we must discuss. Certainly, I would love to have that discussion with you when you meet me in the classes. I hope the video was beneficial for you. I hope you have learned about India's nuclear doctrine after watching my video. Thank you, students. It was very good interacting with you. Thank you so much.